Hi, this is Bryan. Welcome to the Zen and the Art of Manufacturing podcast, where we learn how to improve flow and create calm in a manufacturing environment by using continuous improvement, technology, and improving culture. So today I have with me Stuart Fergusson. Stuart is the head of solutions engineering at Fiix. Fiix is a maintenance management platform built in the cloud. They got like 3,000 customers. They're also partners of ours at Sensor Tracks. So welcome, Stuart. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on. Really looking forward to this one. I love talking about company culture, especially when you dig in as far as the maintenance and operations goes. So
Yeah,
really excited for
and
this.
what's cool. So today, what we're going to talk about is what's a healthy maintenance culture, and how do you build one? How do you recognize one that's bad? How do you turn it around? Like all kinds of different things. And Stuart is a really interesting person to talk to because not only is he head of solutions engineering at Fiix, so he knows the software side, but he actually worked in maintenance at Procter and Gamble for a while, and so he's actually done this stuff. So that's kind of a little bit where I wanted to start. And do you mind telling me kind of what you were doing at P&G, and then we can kind of go from there?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I joined P&G pretty early on in my career, and I actually joined the Plant Controls Information Systems group. So I worked at engineering with a lot of programming, robots, motion control, those kinds of things. Did some capital project work. But it was really when I moved over, you always think about maintenance and, you consider maintainability in those design and install phases, right? The real importance of that, though, didn't really set in until I moved over to the operations side of things. And there I was running one of the dusters lines. I did some work in the side on some equipment improvement in between, and then I moved into this role, managing a team and managing a line. So you're responsible for the inputs and the outputs, right? And it was there that you really started to realize, you know, what goes into getting cases out the door, right? And what that really means, and taking that engineering side and realizing how many more pieces are moving back and forth to really get to that end state.
Right. So you were essentially running the whole line, right? So you were the supervisor on the line, responsible on the shifts or all shifts.
Yeah. When I say I was running the line, to be clear, I had 30 people
Yeah.
significantly better at that than me running the line. My job was to make their days and lives easier. That was it. If you do right by them, you're going to have a clean running line. And as a young guy coming in, that's something you got to learn quickly. You can't mess around with that. You eat and breathe and live and die by the guys running the line. And whatever you can do to help them do that is what you need to be doing at that moment. So I was responsible for the results at the end of the day, right? The line had to run, we had to hit targets, we had to get cases at the door, we had to do it all safely and at quality and at rate. And that's really was my role in the whole thing.
So tell me, data is near and dear to my heart, and so are metrics and measuring things. So tell me, what were you guys measuring on that line? Like, how did you determine success and whether things were running well or not?
A whole whack load of stuff. We had a list of KPIs, longer than a screen, but it all really boiled down to what we called PR, process reliability. Think along the same lines as OEE, right? Um, if you're supposed to be running, are you running? Right. So for the scheduled time, how much do you run? How much do you not? So basically, what your schedule is by your uptime, taking into account your downtime and your scrap, right? What are you putting out the door and at the rate, right? Rates wasn't really an option for us. You're running on rate, but PR was our big one, very much in line with traditional OEE metrics.
But is that what the operators were looking at on the line, or was there something else? Like, was there some subset of that they could directly affect that you were looking at?
Yes, and I think this was really key to how we found success, right? It's not about PR or OEE. It is. Don't get me wrong; those are very important, and the department manager and plant manager need those numbers, and those are what they're looking at. But that's not how you drive change, and that's not how you impact it, right? You give them an OEE number, like how do you impact that day to day, right? Tell me how you're going to impact that positively day in, day out. That's what you should be measuring. So for us, that was stops. We looked a lot at stops. How many times does the line stop? Right? We had targets, in a 12-hour period. I think we were like 7. You didn't want to stop more than 7 times.
Yeah.
and that's like micro stops. That's minor servicing type, like jams and rewinds and things like that, right? Actual breakdowns, we had a fairly advanced maintenance culture and people that really knew what they were doing. So, we were talking 1, 2 breakdowns a month tops. And a breakdown being anything longer than a half hour or anything where we had to replace a part. If you had to swap something out, that's a breakdown.
Right.
So you were looking at stops, we're looking at quality, we're looking at safety, and then we're looking at things like changeover times and case counts, right? So run the line to target, hit the number of cases out the door, do it with a low number of low number of stops, high amount of quality, and no safety issues, and we're getting a perfect shift.
Did you measure something like startups too? Was there like like a first pass yield? Like how long does it take us to get the line stable and producing good product? Or am I thinking of something else? Or was that
We did have an idea like that. We always track. You always track the startups, right? And this is something that I've really tried to instill in a lot of our customers too, as we work through kind of the idea of molding in maintenance culture, right? There's operations and there's going to get the cases, and then you layer in the maintenance activity on top of that. And how do you get everybody on the same page there? And we
Right.
did things a little differently at P&G, but something that I think was really applicable that everybody should monitor and should celebrate as a team are clean startups, right? So if you have a downtime window, you got a maintenance window, you got 6 hours of planned maintenance, go and execute it. Everybody's moving around. It's like ants crawling all over the line, doing all kinds of work. There's so much room for error there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the breakdowns we had were, things just didn't get replaced or fixed correctly, right? So if you could plan that window properly and get everybody on the same page and do all the work, it was a real team goal if we could get a clean startup, right? And that is, you're not down. That hour after running, that hour is on target, right? You're up. There's no, kind of quick downtimes, no things we got to go in and tweak. We did this wrong. We replaced this incorrectly. None of that. You hit the go button and you're running.
Yeah.
Right? That's the goal.
Yeah. Well, so tell me a little bit about how P&G thought about maintenance, because what you told me about this in the past was pretty interesting, and I had not heard of another company that had done this. And then we'll kind of go off into the healthy maintenance culture and those kinds of things.
Yeah, sure. We thought about it a little differently, and not to say we're different than a lot of people. There are definitely companies out there that are more along our track, but we took the idea, the typical TPM ideas of, maintenance is everybody's problem. But we took that a little bit to the extreme in that maintenance is not only everybody's problem, but everybody's responsibility. And our technicians were crazy skilled individuals. They're the ones coming in, they're running the lines, they're calculating the rates, they're doing all that from the operation standpoint, but then they're also planning the maintenance windows. And when the line goes down, they're the ones executing, our maintenance teams, we had some awesome planners, schedulers, and some rebuild experts that did some of the trickier jobs and helped us out with some of the bigger component swaps and things like that. But most of the maintenance was done by the guys running the line. They knew that machine inside out and sideways. It was theirs. The idea of equipment ownership, right? They cared about it, and they treated it well and knew it inside out. And they did all the work, right? If we went down, same guys that press the stop button are the ones going into the equipment and replacing the parts that are on the list for that maintenance window. So it was a little different.
Did it work well?
It did. I firmly believe that it worked really well. It's not an easy place to get to, right? And it's not going to work in every industry. But for us, it worked really well. You're recovering from downtimes faster. You're escalating less things to experts and specialists, and you're really filtering that skill down to the individuals doing the work day to day. It doesn't get any better than that, right? We were even pushing down electrical knowledge and electrical skill. We had people qualified to get in panels and do electrical work on shift, running the equipment with everybody, and these kinds of things, and really drilling the skill into the team. Not only kept the team growing and learning and getting hungry, but it kept the lines up, right? Your downtime goes way down. People are noticing things that you don't notice unless you're in the equipment and you take apart that gearbox one time and you put it all back together, and what it sounds like at startup. What it sounded like when it went down. You're the one in it. So you're walking the line at the start of your shift the next day, You can hear it. You can smell it. You know something's wrong there, right? Everybody knows those people. They're in every manufacturing site. The ones that can just walk into the room and know what's wrong.
Yeah.
It's just it's awesome to just stand back and watch. But how can we drive that scale to everybody? Right? That was
Yeah.
the goal.
Yeah, it's amazing how good some people are with just senses. Like, and that's something that's really interesting about data collection and sensing stuff on machines electronically, is that somebody who's very experienced and has worked in a plant for a long period of time can just walk in the door and tell you if there's something wrong just by sound. I'm from St. Louis. Anheuser-Busch is headquartered there. I've been on their bottling plant tour a zillion times. I've heard stories of their different engineers and maintenance techs that know what's wrong just by listening to it. Right? It's wild to me.
Yeah, and I think that plays in so much to this idea of IoT and really getting data driven with your maintenance and operations activity. People think it's just like, oh, we're going to plug all these sensors in and we're not going to break down anymore. No, we're going to plug all these sensors and we're going to get all this data, and then we have a ton of skilled people that we are going to go and put them towards the right things. Right? We can basically make them more efficient. Right? Where do they have to go? Where should they look? And not only that, when they hear something or when they see something, we go back and look at the data and see if we could have picked it up.
Yeah.
Right? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How can we pick that up for you ahead of time so that we're not reacting, we're being proactive with it. Right? That's the whole idea. It's not data or people. It's how do we get the data and the sensors to make our people better and more effective.
Yeah. What an interesting segue with that too is like, what we get asked this a lot. I'm sure you do too. What do you measure? Like from a maintenance perspective, like what's important? It's such a broad question.
Massively.
How do you answer that?
It depends what level we're looking at, to be honest, right? And I say this, I almost always say this, by the way, when I get asked, what KPIs, what metrics, what are we looking at? And it's like, well, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a maintenance manager out there that's held accountable to the director of operations or the plant manager on maintenance activity. And the North Star is whatever the North Star for that plant manager is. That's how you have to phrase it, right? If he's looking at OEE and that's his end all be all, how is your maintenance team positively impacting OEE? How can you be doing that? Pick apart those activities. Planned downtime. Is planned downtime a big chunk of that? Can we get more efficient with our planned downtime? Or is it more of moving some of that unplanned from reactive to planned downtime, getting your schedule more, a lot more stable, a lot more solid? You tell any planner, if I can have the exact same amount of downtime, but it's all planned versus reactive, they'll take it. 10 times out of 10, they're going to take it, right? Because that's not an interruption. They know it's coming, it's planned, it's there. And then when it's supposed to be running, you are running. Trucks are going on time, right? And then we look at moving it down. So whatever you're doing to impact the plant manager, your maintenance manager probably cares about. But if you start throwing OEE numbers in front of these highly skilled technicians turning wrenches all day and actually fixing things, that's the wrong thing to do, right? So metrics you really want to care about there: PM, on-time completion, schedule compliance, right? Are we doing the right stuff at the right times? And a big one for me, and the one that I really like, is work order completion, not necessarily at the time, but how complete are those work orders, right? So more compliance, right? Are you adding in your notes? Are you adding in the time you spent? Are you adding in maybe photos, videos, whatever it is that you want to link to that you're tracking internally to make sure that you're bringing quality data into your system, right? And then those data folks on the maintenance management supervisor side can really dig in and help you get better. But how are you putting your data in your system?
Why? So this is stupid, but I'm asking it anyway. So why is that important? Why is completing that whole work order and having the pictures and everything, why does that matter? Like, I did the work. Why do I need to put all that stuff in there?
You did do the work. Did you do it the exact same way you did it 6 months ago?
I have no
How about the 6 months before that?
I have no
right?
idea.
We want to be able to go back and look at that. Or, better yet, it's data driven for the guys doing the work too. When they come and they say, listen, we shouldn't be doing this, or we're doing this wrong. And say, well, what do you mean? There's no what do you mean? There's no he said, she said. You're like, okay, like we're doing it too early. Yes, stuff's in great. It's in great shape every time we take it out. Check the photos from the last 3 times we did this maintenance. We've never failed on this component. It looks like it's in great shape. We're over PMing. Now you have a case, right? We've got multiple instances of people saying this, and not just saying this, but recording it on their notes and recording it with photos and And then you're starting to make data-driven decisions, right? So it's just there to help you out. That's really the end all be all of it.
That's interesting. I I never thought about that part of it, and I guess we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because the idea here was to talk about healthy maintenance culture, and I think what you were just describing is part of that, right? So, like, let's kind of circle back a little bit. So we were talking about P&G and how they think that not only is maintenance everybody's problem, but they should also be part of it and actually doing the work there. You don't see that too often, but in some companies you do. But what tell me what you think, or what do you think, or how do you define a healthy maintenance culture?
That's a great question. I think, the first step is that the embodiment of the idea that maintenance is everybody's problem. And that doesn't mean everybody's doing maintenance activity by any means, but it means that people care about maintenance activity. They understand what's happening. And a key way to kind of see it in my mind is what are you celebrating? What are your wins, right? Instead of an us versus them mentality, it's, clean startups, and we're tracking, we're celebrating it as a team, right? When we get perfect shifts, we hit our production targets. The maintenance team is getting celebrated just as much as the guys running the lines. You know what I mean? It's a team effort, and you can feel that very quickly, right? You get one breakdown on a line, see how everybody reacts, and you can tell a lot about your maintenance culture, right? Line goes down. Does somebody pick up the phone and then four guys go to break? Or are you trying to get in there? You're escalating. You're getting people in for advice. You're all working to solve the problem, get the line back up as fast as you can. What does that look like? Right? That's a key indicator for me, is what happens when things go wrong. Are you leaving it and walking away, or are you all there helping? And that's not just operators and maintenance, right? That's line leaders, that's department managers. What are you doing to make this go quicker? And recognizing when you're just in the way. As the line, the line leader, sometimes the best thing you can possibly do to get the line back up and running faster is just go get, a big pack of coffee and a few donuts, because everybody needs 5. They got to cool off and get back in there.
Right.
And you're not helping, right? Recognize when that's happening, or recognize when you need to be on your back onto that piece of equipment holding a wrench, right? And if you're seeing people act like that and take on that mentality of how I can help and how to get things going quicker, that's a good maintenance culture in my mind, right? It's a team sport.
So it's holistic, right? So when we first talked about this, when you say healthy maintenance culture, I'm thinking maintenance department, right? And when you describe it, it is the whole organization, right? And it's we see this a lot, and actually, it's one of the reasons why I created sensor tracks was finger pointing, right? So production says, maintenance didn't do the PM right, so the system doesn't work. And maintenance says the operator doesn't know what they're doing. They don't know how to set up and run the machine. And then engineering says something else. And then, management saying, like, why aren't we running? And so, but I see that a lot. And what you're talking about is much more holistic, idea of maintenance. And it doesn't just live in the maintenance. It doesn't just live in the maintenance department, right? Or group,
exactly. If you're working in silos, all segregated, you're going to have a tough time communicating between those silos.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not where you want to be. You're not going to get the right information. And to be honest, when the finger pointing gets that bad, that's not on them. They're pointing fingers because they don't have any better information. That's on the culture, and that starts at the top, right? Whoever's coaching them in this direction, you're the one causing the problems here. It's not them. They're doing their jobs. They're coming in. You got to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're doing their job day in, day out. They don't have the information to make these calls. And that's on you, Mr. Manager, wherever you are, right? So how do you make that a team sport? How do you make the maintenance guys care about the operations? Because guess what? The maintenance team gets to get home for dinner a lot more often if operations is on the same page. If we're running the equipment well, we're keeping our eye out for defects, we're listening and feeling the equipment and understanding what's going on, you're catching things, you're putting in your defects, you understand what's coming and what we need to go action. There's support for the maintenance windows. Your maintenance team gets to go home for dinner. It's great. Inversely, I don't think you'll find any operations team running a production line that can say, the days are better when there's breakdowns. Like, nobody wants that. No one wants to go home not hitting the target. right? Everybody wants to do a good job. Like that's just fundamental. So what can you do to get there faster?
So what are some other things you see in a unhealthy maintenance culture? It's like, what are some of the other hallmarks of that?
Yeah, I mean the easy ones are the finger pointing and some of this, walking away from the equipment, these kinds of things. But there's one key one. You and I've discussed this before, but there's one that's interesting to wrap your head around at the start, and that's the whole idea of a superhero culture. Um, and this one's tough, right? Because everyone wants to get recognized for doing a good job. So when you get called in the middle of the night because you're the only one that can fix something, and you go to the equipment, and you get it back up and running, and we're going again. Really, what you want to do is celebrate the fact that, oh, like, great job, Bryan. You came in, you got the equipment running. No one else could do this. Fantastic. Thank you so much. But the reality is you were down for 4 hours in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a win anywhere. Yes, you should be recognized. That was above and beyond coming in and doing that. Great. That's awesome. But if that's what you consider success in your maintenance team, and that's kind of the gold standard, you're not driving at the right stuff, right? That's not root cause. Getting Bryan to come in the middle of the night is not how you systemically fix this problem. Right, you need to start moving away from this idea of the superhero complex. Like, everybody wants to be the superhero, and I totally get that, but that's because we're recognizing the wrong things. Right, we aren't celebrating when somebody identifies a PM that's at the wrong interval. Right, who's figuring out the root cause there? Who's doing that maintenance activity, that preventative maintenance activity that nobody sees because they're doing it while the line's down and there's no pressure? But that job is significantly more important than the breakdown. Right, we're doing it proactively. We're not causing stops. We're not having these emergency shutdowns and breakdowns. It's better across the board. It's better for cost. It's better for uptime. And it's significantly better for safety, right? If you're under a piece of heavy equipment, replacing a major component at 2 a.m. after working a 12-hour day shift, I guarantee you're in a much different headspace than if that job had been planned for a week and you're doing it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday,
Yeah.
right? We really can't overlook the amount that safety plays into the whole thing.
Yeah. So how do you, I guess I'll start here. And we talked about this a little bit, but where does this healthy maintenance culture start? Like, we said it started at the top, but like, who is that in a plant?
I mean, for me, it's always been the plant manager, right? The key is how disconnected is that person, and to no fault of their own, but how big's the plant, right? How often do they actually get to talk to the individuals on the floor running the equipment? The answer should be quite often. And if you're a plant manager out there listening, walk the floor. It goes a long way. But the reality is, it does start up there. Do they care? They care about their people. They care about what's happening on the floor and what people are doing. It's empathy driven, right? And from there, there's metrics, right? Every plant's got to hit targets or report out their metrics. And it's all about not overwhelming people with those. Celebrate the right stuff, push down the right stuff, and take what you need to take at your level, right? I mean, you need to be prepared to do that as leaders in a plant. So starts with the plant manager, which means those frontline managers, right? Your operations managers leading all the teams, they need to understand those goals. They need to understand what ends at them, and they need to understand what they're pushing down, right? So for me, if I care about stops, quality, and safety for my guys, that's really what I need you to do day in, day out, right? If you can hit these, we're in a good place. And if we don't hit PR, that's fine. I will take that, right? You did exactly what we were supposed to do on that shift. Something happened, something went wrong. Let's dig into it. Let's solve it together. But that's on me, right? You need to know where each buck stops and what you're passing down, because it's just not fair. It's not fair to take it out on the maintenance team, right, who's doing their best to keep everything running and get all their PMs done. There's no sense in taking out a missed monthly case target on them. That's not right at all, right? So starts at the top. Actionable stuff. Celebrate the right things at the right times, and that's where you start.
So if you're okay, so that's good. So if you're parachuted into a plant manager role, right, that has unhealthy maintenance culture, we got some finger pointing, we got some superheroes, we got silos of information where they're not sharing what they know with the other maintenance techs. You mentioned that, it kind of starts with the North Star. What are we trying to do, right? The P&G example was we got to get cases out the door, or it's PR or whatever it is. So then after you have the North Star, like where do you go to there? Where do you go from there to start to build those foundations to do some of the things that you were just talking about?
Yeah, I mean, coming into an unhealthy culture it's definitely harder. Um, Listen, that's where you start. Walk around and talk to everybody. Um, and I don't, no, I mean that very sincerely, right? Everybody's there wants to do a good job, and they're frustrated. That's probably what you're going to find. In an unhealthy culture, there's going to be a lot of frustration. So listen to it, right? What's broken down? What's going wrong? And don't just talk through a solution. That's not what's needed. Listen, get the picture on the whole problem, and then start making some data-driven insights into how we're going to fix this, right? So if there's finger pointing back and forth, that's okay, right? That's where we are. That's fine. Let's get the data here and the data here so that the maintenance team knows what's happening with operations. The operations teams knows what's happening with maintenance. We're tracking that in the same meetings. We're on top of those same targets. And then we really understand what's going on, right? You can't really argue the data when it's presented, but then as the leadership team, as soon as that's presented in the form of data, then it's not confirming finger pointing.
Right.
That's where we get tripped up. A lot of people do a really good job at coming in and getting data driven. But once you have the data, don't use that to validate your finger pointing. Use that to start driving, okay, this is the problem, team. Let's all go get after it, right? How are we going to fix it? And start getting input on that. Don't just make a sweeping decision. It's not going to work. Listen to maintenance, listen to ops. What are they telling you? What's breaking down? How can you fix that at the same time as working towards your metrics, right? Don't confirm the finger pointing. It's not going to get you anywhere.
So don't confirm the finger pointing. And then, so if the data is telling us something, right? So here's the root cause of these breakdowns, and if you're walking into an organization that has, maybe not really unhealthy, but something in between healthy and unhealthy, and they're just becoming data driven, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for improvement, like an unbelievable amount. So what do you do? Like, what do you start with that list? You just start chipping away at the stuff that's going to make the biggest impact, or how does that work?
Yeah, good question. It depends what you're running into. Is it skill gaps, right? Is it a will gap, right? Are you looking at people that just aren't motivated? In that case, you have a morale thing, right? And to be honest, they're harder to turn around. You got to start doing right by your people because they've been rubbed the wrong way in the past. Trickier problem. If it's skill gaps, right? If we're doing maintenance incorrectly, or if we just have too many stops and we don't know what's going on, that's a lot easier, right? People want to do better. They'll take it in. So you can do some enablement work and go after the low hanging fruit, right? In the case that it's downtime that's eating your lunch. There's a lot of people with, I know Lean, Six Sigma, there's a lot of different methodologies out there. All boils down to proper reliability engineering. What's eating your lunch? Go fix that. And then make sure that stops don't breed other stops, right? Work at it systemically. There's tons of resources out there to drive towards that. So on that side, you're fine. On the will side, you got to get your people back on your side, right? What's the problem? What's really going on? And how can you help? That's all. Figure out how you can help.
It's great that every single one of these podcasts that I've done and everything that I've learned about lean and all the different, production methodologies to kind of improve things in a factory, every single one of them comes back to culture and listening to your people. I think it's cool that you pointed that out as well. It's like, you got to walk around, you got to listen, you got to have faith in your people. If you have morale issues, you got to do right by them. You can't, I make this joke a lot. People can use sensor tracks to really help improve things, but you can also use it as a knucklehead detector and start firing people based on the data. And the knucklehead detector method does not improve morale. It does not improve culture. It will not get you where you want to go, which is similar to the finger pointing, that you're talking about in maintenance.
Couldn't agree more. And we look at maintenance data the same way, right? Are you policing, or are you looking for insights to help drive maintenance forward? Like, what are you looking for here? And yeah, policing doesn't work. One, it can be skirted, and two, you're not building a whole heck of a lot of trust if you're just helicoptering, right? If there's one thing that's going to separate a successful manufacturing plant from a non-successful one, it's everybody cares about the people on the floor. If you don't and you care about the numbers and the cases, it's not going to work. If there's genuine empathy and care for the people that by the way make or break your living as a plant manager, like if you care about them and they know that and you're actually doing right by them, you're going to get a lot farther in your facility. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So how do you, I want to go back to metrics a little bit for a minute. I think that, and I think you agree with this, but at different levels in the organization, you have different metrics that you look at, right? So an individual, maintenance tech is going to have different things that they're going to be judged on, their boss, something different, all the way up to the plant manager and up to the CEO. So, if I'm living in a healthy maintenance culture that has, a system that's tracking things like we were talking about before, walk me through kind of the bottom up of that. So if I'm a maintenance tech, like what am I looking at? What am I judged on? What are my metrics? What do I care about?
Yeah, you care about your work orders. I mean, first and foremost, right? That's the plan. You care about the equipment, you care about the work orders, and what you're doing against the equipment. And it doesn't need to grow significantly past that, right? What's high priority? What do I need to go get done? Do I have all the resources for that? That's your end all be all. Work orders open, work orders closed, and your schedule compliance, right? Are we getting to things on time, and are we getting them done? Again, I think there's a lot of metrics you can look in there for as far as, work order completion in the sense of good, strong, detailed work orders. There's also just some basic coaching you can run through at the supervisor level to make sure that we're moving towards that as a company and as a culture. But really, like, it shouldn't be any more complicated than what do I need to go get done today, right? And what do I need to do it? That's the main thing. At the scheduling level, right, when you start talking about the supervisory roles, that's when you start caring a little bit more around PM percentage, schedule compliance, right? That's getting to more of your North Star. You could even start tying in some mean time to repair, mean time between failure information. Mean time to repair, I like more on the maintenance side. Mean time between failure is a little more of an RE analysis, right? Are we talking about stops? Are we talking about genuine breakdown failure, right?
Yeah.
And where are you drawing the line there too? Right? That's another thing. How do you define breakdowns? That's something you need to figure out before we even start talking about this. What's a breakdown? What's a stop? And what's whose problem? So work orders, you're getting into the schedule compliance, your PM compliance, things like that. And then as soon as you're out of that kind of supervisor planner level, you start caring about plant metrics, right? You need to know how your MTTR and your schedule compliance and your PM percentage ties into, call it OEE, right? Or, if it's case completion that you're looking at, right? Are we hitting all the delivery targets? What's feeding into that, right? Then you need to know that information because that's how you gain traction, right? I need this 8-hour window next month on this line, and I know it's our critical line, but if we don't do this, this is what's going to happen to our OEE in the quarter after, right? We need to do this now to offset this risk, right? And if you can start speaking that way and representing your team that way, it makes things a lot easier to look at the org and understand what is maintenance doing, right? Everybody sees them out there. They're incredibly high-skilled employees. We know physically what they're doing, but how are they impacting the bottom line? If you don't know that, you should have that data. If you don't, I'm happy to help you out. We can start going down that path. But you need that data. You need to know how you're impacting those bigger numbers. And that really boils down to how effective your maintenance activity is.
But if you have a really good maintenance department and maintenance is working well with the production planners, you may not ever notice anything, right? Because it's potentially, you could almost never have a breakdown because they're doing the PMs right. And it really not be an issue, right?
Yep, it is. You're not going to get there without maintenance being close to the equipment, though.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that, yeah, you're running without breakdowns. Great. That means your operators are dialed in, right? They know their equipment inside and out. They know what they're looking for. And when they hear something or when they see something, they call their maintenance guy. Hey, come take a look at this. It's a little fishy. I think we might have an issue with, say, this bearing on this drive roller. come take a look, right? And then you go through that diagnostic together while running. You determine if it's an issue, if it's something we can fix on a quick stop. Is it a straight up replacement? Your maintenance guy is making that call with your operations guy. You're putting that work request in, right? Okay, it's definitely something we have to rebuild, but me as a maintenance guy, I've rebuilt this thing 3-4 times in the past. Let's go look at those work orders. Okay, no, this is around when it fails. So we should put a PM in. So there's one request that goes to my maintenance planner. Hey, we need to start PMing this thing because we're going to have a failure. But we've also had this in the past where we've noticed it at this stage and it's run for 2 or 3 days before it's been a problem. So, we have a clean inspect window tomorrow for an hour. Let's plan this job in here. We'll get the right person out. We'll get that work order in the backlog, get it prioritized in the right parts here at the right time. There, you just avoided a breakdown. If your window's that 24-hour period, you just avoided a breakdown because you had that good communication. You get the right guys to the problem. You identified it and you planned it. There you go. That's a lot different than bang. Oh, the drive roller's down. We can't run cases.
Yeah. What's interesting. Okay. So I love this story. So what's interesting about this is there's only really 3 people that know about the story that you just told, right? It's the operator, the maintenance tech that comes over, and maybe the maintenance scheduler, right? To get this stuff done. In the case where you have a big crash, breakdown, whatever, and then the superhero parachutes in and fixes the problem, everybody knows about that. So how do you give credit or celebrate these things that are really the team doing their job on a daily basis, but they're doing it so well that we don't have any of these disruptions that you've been talking about like this whole time, right? Like you'd much rather have a maintenance window where you're going to do something done versus it break down and nobody expected and now you're delivering late, right?
Yep.
How do you do that? Celebrate
breakdowns.
That's what I'm kind of talking about.
Breakdowns are easy, right? When that happens, everybody knows about it.
Sure.
Right? That nothing's happening. The equipment is not running. People know. When you catch something ahead of time like that, how are you tracking that? A lot of people aren't, or they're just putting in a work order and it doesn't go anywhere, right? As the line leader or the supervisor of that area, do you care when your employees find defects, right? When they find things that are going to go wrong? Because if that's not something you're tracking and celebrating, you got to figure that one out right away. A defect tracking system, a work request system, somewhere where you're feeding that information in and celebrating it, right? So we caught 5 premature failures this week, right? Huge round of applause. That's leading the plant. We're getting all our defects in. We're leading the plant in defects found, defects fixed, or breakdowns prevented. These are all things you can track that aren't hard to track. And your plant manager probably isn't going to care about defects found. He or she should. But if they don't care about defects found, they do care about uptime, right? Yeah. So we found this many defects, and that's our input, right? That's your leading indicator, your defects found. My lagging indicator is we found progressively more defects week over week for the past 5 weeks. Look at where our breakdowns have gone.
Yeah.
Right? That's now the metric that they care about. The breakdowns get reduced, but you can't just tell your guys, hey, go reduce breakdowns. Tell you what, they can reduce breakdowns, but the breakdowns are still going to be there. They're just going to figure out how to make the numbers work. Go increase defects. Find some defects, right? Let's look at the equipment. Let's find out what's wrong, right? And I don't know, team that finds the most defects this week, come up with a prize, right? Nice Amazon gift card or something, right? Motivate it. Make it a game. Gamify it if you have to. But the point is leading indicators, not lagging, right? Defects found go up. Defects fixed go up. Breakdowns go down.
Yeah, makes sense. So are you seeing, so a lot of companies have daily meetings, like everybody huddles around the communication boards. We're talking just manufacturing here, in the front of the plant, or they'll have departmental meetings. Are you seeing maintenance presenting that data in those meetings, to celebrate those in front of a larger audience or the supervisors of the lines? Like, what do you see from that side, from a communication perspective?
Yeah, good question. First off, maintenance needs to be in that meeting. You wouldn't believe how many times maintenance actually isn't in the production meetings. Not good. They need representation there because that's where you need to be escalating things. So it should be the line. In my opinion, it's got to be the production folks, right? Hey, we found this many defects, and you know what? We went through it this morning in our line meeting, and we flagged 3 as critical. right? So these are our 3 critical defects. They're on the work plan for today. They're stuff we got to get done and got to get looked at. And the maintenance teams is great. Like, we have this person at this slot, send them out there, because in this culture, we're not reacting to breakdowns every 20 minutes because we're running well. We got a guy, we'll send him over. Let's take a look at those for sure. Tag us to that on your team board. And, let's reconnect on this one during the reconnect cycle at 3:00. Right. So there's 3 pieces of that. Who's escalating it, right? And then who's solving it, and then who's checking that it actually happened. Because your guys that are out there finding defects, they just did all this work. They went and combed the equipment. They're like, hey, these things are wrong. I found them. Great job. Nice work. Awesome. If nothing happens, they're not going to do it again. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, sure. They won the gift card or whatever. But what's a lot more important to them is that you found the defect. Great. Hours later or right on that next shift, there's a maintenance guy out there with you, walking through what you found, what happened. Okay, we could definitely fix that. You fix it, you prevent a breakdown. They're not having a terrible shift where you're running from breakdown to breakdown. They're having a nice smooth one where they get to pass it off to the next team. Hey, no issues today, a couple minor safety things, right? Quality's on point. You want to watch this thing, it's drifting slightly out of alignment. I'm going home to dinner with my kids. It's a much different conversation than a shift with 5 breakdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I like the idea of maintenance being everybody's problem, in the sense that it's, like a holistic view, and that as an operator, you can't just push the stop button, call maintenance, walk away and go to smoke a cigarette or have some coffee. You need to be there understanding what's going on, because the better you understand it, the more likely it is you can keep your machine up and running and hit the numbers that you have to hit. Right. So, I like that idea. What else did we not cover that you think is good to talk about from either, metrics perspective, healthy maintenance culture, those kinds of things?
Man, we covered a lot of ground. Where we haven't gone is, I guess, I don't know. We've covered quite a bit here. Operations tied to maintenance. We talk about it separately. If there's one takeaway, think about it together, right? How's each group helping the other, and how are they talking? Ops should know what maintenance is doing. Maintenance should know what ops is doing, and what their targets are, right? And then you can work towards them together. If they have siloed targets that don't meet in the middle, that's a problem. Make sure they meet somewhere at some level, and we understand how everybody's impacting that. But I think if there's one thing you can take away from the whole conversation, when you're talking about maintenance cultures, have you listened to your people, and do you genuinely care about the struggle that they're having? That's the end all be all of it, right? Do you care? And do they know you care?
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of people that care greatly, and there's some excuse, right? They're too busy. They have this going on. Something's gone wrong. That's not going to get you very far. For the maintenance tech who's been under a piece of equipment all day because we can't get this thing back up and running, and no one's come over and said thank you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I know what that's like from the software side. Like, we have breakdowns and things from a software perspective, and the system's down and customers can't access. Not that this happens hardly ever if you're a customer, but, and we're doing everything we can to get it done. It's stressful, right? There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people waiting on you as a maintenance person to get that done, right? If you're having trouble, so it means a lot when the people you work for come over and say, thanks, we understand, it's tough and you're doing the best you can. And it means a lot. It seems minor, but it does.
Yeah. Is there anything we can do to help? It's always like that. You get the mental image of the kid passing his dad wrenches in the car. But, if you're under that piece of equipment, you got to come out to grab a wrench and go back under. It's the worst feeling in the world. Just passing somebody a wrench goes a long way. I don't know what I'm doing. You do. How can I help? Right. I recognize I have no skill here. I recognize what you're doing, but I'm sure there's something that I can do to make it easier, even if that's get the heck out of the way.
Yeah.
That's fine. I can keep everybody else out of the way too. Right.
Yeah. 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 You're pissed you grab the wrong wrench or whatever. It doesn't fit. You think the nut's this size, it's that size. Yeah. It's just contributes to your overall frustration. Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep temperatures down, keep keep slugging on, right? We're all in this together, and how are we going to get back up and going?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. So where do you go to learn like new stuff, like about maintenance, manufacturing tech, that kind of stuff, to kind of keep up on trends and things like that?
Good question. I mean, there's a lot of great resources out there online. All kinds of, Reliability Web's got their stuff going. There's all kinds of maintenance blogs that are really, really good. Podcasts. To be honest, there's so many good maintenance podcasts and operations and manufacturing podcasts cropping up. This one included, where you learn a lot because you're listening to people. So, if there's one kind of source of truth that's the best place to go to learn something, talk to some folks. Talk to somebody maybe outside your industry in a similar role. You're going to learn a ton. But the conversations that I have every day with our customers who are struggling with their maintenance or who are trying to use our platform to do something crazy and awesome and futuristic, I learn more in those conversations than I do from most articles, to be honest, because it's practical application, right? We can theorize how we're going to do it all the time, but when the boots hit the floor and you're actually using it, you learn so much about how people are doing things differently in awesome different ways.
Yeah, you really do. I guess the cool thing about maintenance is that we focused on manufacturing because that's what the podcast is about, but it cuts across like everything from buildings to utilities to oil and gas to cars, mining, like you name it. And there's a lot that you can draw from across all those different industries.
Agreed. I mean, I think you can draw so many parallels from manufacturing down too, right? If you look at these big end-to-end supply chains and custom fill companies and all these crazy things, they just have big bloated extended processes, and the advantage of manufacturing is you dial that all into a nice small package, right?
Yeah.
But it's all applicable. It's all the same stuff. We're all trying to eliminate loss. We're all trying to get better, get faster, get cleaner. And the advantage of manufacturing is you get to see it from end to end. A lot of people don't actually get to see their whole processing company from one end to the other, right? From raw materials to a case going out the door. That's pretty cool. And if you can think about your whole business that way, and we're starting here and we're trying to get here, all those pieces in between, it shrinks your world a little and helps you think about the problem.
It does. It's pretty cool. Plus all the weird stuff that you never think about that people have to make, right? That you run across.
Yeah, there's some wild processes out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one company that we know really well, they have like 99% market share in the pre-made bacon slicing equipment market. Pre-made bacon slicing equipment market. It's like, what? Like clearly you have to slice bacon to put it in the package so that we can cook it at home or it's already cooked, right? But I never thought that there's a company that's just making that machine that cuts up, this bacon. So I don't know. It's wild. I'm sure you've seen a lot of that too. And
oh man, OEMs are, there's some really cool people and jobs and happening in the OEM space. We instead of making something repeatably all kinds of times, we need a piece of equipment to do this.
mm-hmm.
That's a cool problem to have. Like making tape and rewinding it. I saw a machine, one of the OEMs I used to deal with, that was building a tape machine. Basically, we're making rolls of tape. Okay, well, we're going to make an 8-foot roll of tape, and then we're going to cut it all up, right, with this other slicing machine. Then we're going to package it all together, vacuum seal it, and chuck it out. And you're going to do 250 rolls a minute.
Mm-hmm.
No, not enough. Okay, fine. We'll do 800 rolls a minute. It's like, how? Look, what are you doing? And it's just awesome to see, right? It's all this standing equipment, a bunch of people outside a robot cell with computers, and they turn it on, and it's wild.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. We're starting to get cannabis customers now too. And one of the cooler machines that I've seen is a joint roller, which is like, when you think about it, so it's kind of like a cigarette, but it's not a cigarette because it's not tobacco. It doesn't go in the same way. The wrappers are different. There's no filter, right? And so like these are brand new things that people are doing, and it's kind of wild. Especially it's wild to see it on an industrial scale. I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime, but
yeah. Well, our folks, so I was at P&G in the Brockville location, Brockville, Ontario.
mm-hmm.
And we had a lot of great people. And a lot of the folks that I ended up working with, they ended up closing the plant. That's kind of how I made my way over to tech and software. But as they're closing the plant, we did a pretty good job of getting our people out there in the job market. And something we realized really quickly is this upskill that they have is serving them well. I mean, we have a lot of folks over at Canopy Growth, which is one of the larger cannabis companies in Canada, and they're doing all kinds of cool stuff. Two of the guys on the electrical team with me went over there and stood up the full rolling plant, right? And they're into the beverages plant. They're basically traveling around the country, standing all this equipment up from the ground, controls right through to operations, and they're doing some really, really awesome work over there. It's a pretty cool space to be in.
Yeah, it's a really cool, and especially because at least in the US with the regulations, like they can't outsource a lot of it. So you see, just like you were talking about before, like all of it in a single plant, right? In a single location. Plant is kind of fun pun there, but yeah. Like they have to extract it, they're putting stuff in, and they're making gummies, they're doing like all of this stuff all in one location. It's really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Really
and
cool.
It's so new.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, you're learning everything too. It's all so new that, it's okay, we're doing it this way. It's worked reliably for 2 weeks. Great, let's double the output.
Yeah.
Because no one's done it before, right? We don't know where the ceiling is. Let's try. Let's do whatever we want here, right? This is a greenfield space, and some of the work is just awesome. Talk about going from no industry whatsoever to fully automated and running in like 2-3 years. It's just wild.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really, really cool. So I got a personal question for you, and then we'll wrap it up. And this is something I like to ask everybody. I always get interesting answers. So what's something you learned as a kid that still sticks with you today?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think so a bit of background, I guess, on myself. I grew up on a farm outside of Ottawa, Ontario. And you'll learn a lot of stuff on a farm as a kid. But you learn this idea that really transferred well to manufacturing. The job just doesn't really end. If you own it, you care about it, and the whole idea of work ethic. And I don't mean, you just put your head down and do a bunch of work, but the fact that, you're tired, you come home, you still got cows to feed, right? Or you still got to get this stuff done. It's not going to go anywhere. And realizing that you're kind of in it, right? And then the idea that, it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's a lifestyle. And it's all about what you make from it. So I would say if there's one thing that's really stuck for me from my childhood, it's that work mentality, right? It's that attitude towards it and the work ethic.
It kind of fits with like the way I think about, people talk about work-life balance all the time. And I just think about it as life, right? Like I work sometimes I don't work, it sort of seems like that's what you're saying too. Like you went to work, you got to come home, you got to feed the cows. If you don't feed the cows are going to die. It's just
not ideal. Work-life balance it's what you need to get, but the way you get it isn't traditional anymore. The way we work isn't traditional anymore. And it's moving more and more towards what people thought of farming, right? Farmers give me fun. I was take a nap at 10 in the morning, right? And they're out cold for an hour. But the reality is they were up at 4:30 to milk. So, it's this bigger picture, and the whole world is kind of going there with, what is really work and not work, and how do you make it all fit in your life? Because it is your life. It's part of your life. There's no two ways around it.
And leverage it to get to do what you want to do, right? Now, not wait. Anyway, we're getting philosophical on Friday.
Gotta love it. Friday afternoon, you're supposed to get a little philosophical, right?
You're the second person that's told me that today. I agree. All right, cool. Well, anything else? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to say to wrap this thing up?
Plug? Not really. If you're having any maintenance issues, come talk to us. I love talking about maintenance. But otherwise, nothing from my end. It's great to come on and have these conversations. The fact that more and more people in manufacturing and maintenance are talking about culture first and foremost is awesome. I think this is the direction that the whole conversation needs to go. Is how do we, as a collective, as an industry, get better with our culture, right? It's traditionally had some unhealthy cultures associated, and it doesn't have to, right? We can all be so much better and work together and really make North America world-class manufacturing in the sense that we can do it very, very well. We know we can. And how do we make that sustainable?
Yeah, Yeah, I totally agree with you. And we're seeing it grow quite a bit. Maybe it's just the people that reach out to us, but it's pretty cool to see. And I agree with you. Like, I feel like we went through a period where everybody was focused on tools like Six Sigma and Lean, and tell me about all the different tools and the Japanese words that go in there, or the stuff that GE was doing. And now people have come around to the realization that it's really culture that matters. And if you have a good culture, you listen to your people like you've described today, you can put the tools in and they'll work. But if you don't have that stuff, it's never going to work.
Couldn't agree more. It's the same with software, right? You look at Fiix, you look at sensor tracks. These are tools. They're very valuable tools that can help you get there. Same as Six Sigma, same as Lean, but it's all about the culture, right? Behind it. Are people really bought in? Are you driving towards the same things? Do you have the same common goals, right? And if you have the culture right, the tools are really valuable. Otherwise, you just bought a lot of shelfware. And then let's start talking about the big problems, right? Let's get manufacturing dialed, let's get our output, and then let's start talking about sustainability, right? How can we do all this with next to no carbon footprint, right? Reliability is huge for that. If you can run, you don't have to throw things out. It's great, right? Reduce scrap, all these kinds of things, and let's start working towards what the people really care about, right? Because that's what we're all here for. Make everybody's lives a little bit better.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. All right. Well, thanks, Stuart. Thanks for joining us. This has been the Zen and the Art of Manufacturing podcast. I'm Bryan Sapot. Please subscribe and rate us 5 stars. Unless you hate us, send me an email before you give us a 1 star. And we're on every place you can get a podcast for free. So listen, and no ads, which is good too. All right, Stuart. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me.